So, hello everyone. My name is Ashley Little, and I'm joined by Shawn Bowen, Kaylee Bodie, Cameron Peters, and possibly Jacob McPherson later. We'll see if he can jump on. And we are wholesaling out of the box. We're back for chapter 2 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris was an FBI negotiator and has since taken his skills to put them out to businesses to learn how to better negotiate and better their businesses. Shawn has been a fan of this book for a while and regularly references it with sellers, buyers, the group, and even us. So over the next few weeks, we're going to go chapter by chapter and discuss all of Chris's techniques and how they can help us, and more importantly, you, learn how to be a better negotiator and make your businesses even better. I realized I used better a lot in that intro, so I'll have to rewrite that for next time. But for now, why don't we get started with you, Shawn?
Awesome. Welcome back, guys. We're going to do chapter 2. And this one dives into being prepared and preparing for what the questions are, the conversation, and what's happening to what you're going to get into, right? And one of the big pieces here is uncover as much information as possible. Don't prepare a counter argument. So preparing is a goal of preparation. Reveal potential surprises in the negotiation. Hypothesis versus assumptions. Don't assume. Use negotiation to test these hypotheses. Uncover as much information as possible, which is the one we just talked about. Do not prepare a counter argument. Uncover what the counterpart actually needs: money, time, emotional needs, etc. Help them feel safe in order to help them open up and talk more. And finally, your primary focus: the other person and what they have to say. So let me get into the first part of this was the prepare. The second part was the tone, the mirroring process. Okay, that's all of chapter 2. So
yeah, why don't we talk about preparation?
Yeah. So preparing is what is it like to prepare for a phone call, right? It's almost like you can't prepare. And this would be, I would like to use examples in the past of when I was learning this kind of stuff. It was practicing it, reading it, and then not having it in front of me when it was time to actually get into it and use it, right? Because again, if I was looking and reading something, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on. I wasn't paying attention to the seller. I wasn't paying attention to a buyer. Again, I wasn't listening to what they were saying. I was too busy worried about what I'm trying to get to, or like most people call it a script, but I was trying to get down my script, right? So I wasn't thinking about anything. So prepare, be ready, and understand what you're trying to do and where you're going with your negotiations, and the questions you're getting ready to ask, right? So revealing potential surprises in the negotiation is part of it. If you're not, when somebody pops up a question and you're not prepared for it, usually you get on the defensive, right? Or you try to fill the void because you're trying to say something over top of them, right? So this is it's a pretty standard issue or standard problem people have. They get into somebody talking and then somebody rebuttals to them and they say something that they're not ready for, and then they immediately start talking over top of them, right? So this is a problem. Hypotheses and assumptions. Don't assume. Use negotiations to test these hypotheses. I don't ever assume anything, because this goes back to the questioning, right? Like I'm questioning things in a manner, to the labeling, to the framing, to the mirrors that we'll get into here eventually in this chapter. But I'm really trying to figure out what's going on, right? This is what creates the getting to the why, right? What's the problem? How am I able to help? How am I going to be of service to this person to help them finish out this issue that they have, and not through a numerical standpoint, right? Uncover as much information as possible. That again goes back into the mirror part of this, which is asking these questions to let them continuously talk. Let them unravel what's in their head. Let them get out of what they want to talk about so that they can get comfortable with you. Let them feel that comfortability to, kind of go deep down into the questions that really nobody wants to feel comfortable to talk about, right? You're probably going to hear that out of chapter 1 when you go back and hear our talk about that. But just being real with people is a big piece of this. Uncover what your counterpart actually needs. This could be time. This could be money. This is emotional attachments to certain things. Help them feel safe in order to help them open up and talk more. This is kind of right back to the other piece of just opening up, having a real conversation, right? Everybody knows the fakeness. Everybody knows the unreal, right? You can see directly through it. It's just not comfortable. It's like getting on a sales call with a telemarketer and you're like, oh God, here we go again, right? Like, how do we get through this? So allow those people to open up by having a friendly conversation. If somebody's talking, they got their kid in the background making a bunch of noise, speak to it. Hey man, did I catch you at a good time? Maybe it's dinner. I don't want to interrupt the kids. They're going to tell you, yeah, you got the wrong time, man. Call me back. No, I'm good. Because you asked, you took the time to ask them the question, right? You allowed them to control / open up to you and say if they do or they don't want to talk anymore, right? This allows people to feel really safe inside of you giving that question. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Are you sure it's a good time to talk? Yeah, not a problem. Or if they're not, they can back out of it. And then your primary focus is the other person and what they have to say. Again, this is going to go, I'm going to say this a million times. It sounds like a broken record. Shut up and listen. That is the name of the game, right? People take that for granted sometimes. You'd be really surprised at how much information comes out by just a few questions / a few mirrors. When those happen, the amount of information that just comes flowing out of people because they want to talk about the problem is unbelievable. And you can't put a dollar sign / neurological to that, right? They're just freely talking. So that's what you want to happen. That's really good. So before we go into the next one, that's kind of like the prepared. Recapping here, you can't be prepared unless you read what you're trying to do ahead of time and then put it down and listen to the seller or the buyer when you're talking to them. Don't assume anything in negotiations.
So with that being said, then how do you prepare when you can't prepare?
This is, when I say prepare, I mean get your scripts, get your comfort, get your knowledge in your head that you're trying to do ahead of time if you're looking to be prepared this way. Don't be in the middle of a call and try to be preparing, right? Like, don't ask questions to where you're totally focused on a script or a line item page that says like, here's what I'm going to do. So if you're going to talk about future preparing, it's read your information ahead of time, get aware of it, get familiar with it, and then bounce through it back and forth and get back on your guideline of going down to it, but just not feeling robotic. Yeah. So that would be, if that help answers the prepare part.
Yeah. What I hear then is practice.
Yes.
Something we do with our group is like call role playing. And I think that is probably one of the very best things you can do to practice, get comfortable with it, make your mistakes with someone else. And then as you get more comfortable with it, you'll be able to go in and make those calls, talk to sellers, talk to buyers, and know what you're know your numbers and how to approach different circumstances or different scenarios without being that person that has 8 million facts in their head and is ready with a rebuttal, like boom, boom, boom. I didn't even listen to what you said, but I know A, B, and C.
Yep. Practice commitment would be a good example of that. And we do, like you mentioned, we talk about that in our group and we talk about it inside of our company. Like, you're going to screw it up. That's okay. But do it over and over again to get better at it because it's practice. So yeah, I agree. That's a good example of preparing. So
Cam and Kaylee, how do you guys prepare? I know, Kaylee, you're newer, so we're going to be asking Kaylee a lot of questions, but she might not have all the experience yet, but she'll get there.
Yes. So basically right now my preparing is, what Shawn just said, make sure, I'm having my script or whatever. But in this book, first of all, the whole book, I think, coming from a sales background, was totally opposite of what everyone has taught for years as what sales is. So I really got that from starting with this chapter. So like Shawn mentioned, if a person says they're busy, but sales 101, oh, that's just a fake objection. but it really isn't, because they may truly be busy, and we don't want to be pushy, and we don't want to push them off. So, being prepared for me is having to switch my brain totally off from a sales perspective to I'm just here to help people. And on the hypothesis versus assumptions that was in this chapter, um, for me, an assumption is something that you think, or that you, based off of the little piece of information you hold as a fact, when you really haven't found that it's a fact. So, but don't dismiss that. It's basically saying have that it's a possibility. So make it take that hypothesis and test it by asking more, by getting more information to see if that hypothesis then becomes a fact. So I did like that part. But yeah, it's preparing is playing my different scenarios in my head, but not holding on to it as assumptions or judgments.
Okay, thank you. Cam?
So my preparations are pretty short and sweet before I hop on a call. If it's a cold call that I've never called on, so I'll do it two different ways, right? If it's a cold call I've never called on, I take a look at the house real quick and the specifics, just so I understand what area of Virginia I'm in, and then I hop on the phone. If it's a follow-up call, then of course I'm going to read back through the notes and what's been said, so I remind myself of those key indicators. I write like really short notes that maybe I could maybe only interpret, but it'll jog things in my memory to last time they were talking about their brother, or they were talking about their dog or whatever, and I'll try to build rapport again that way.
You remember it's a vacant lot.
Yes, that's and then if you miss your notes, man, you can screw the whole thing up. So the other thing that's big in this prepare is don't assume. We've had so many conversations about that with different people in the business about not making assumptions, right? Oh, there's no way they'll ever take $70,000. You don't know that. You feel like that's a low offer, right? You, as the person talking to them, you don't know what situation they're in until you ask those questions and see where they're at and see what motivates them, right? You don't know that until you truly, maybe you uncover that black swan that we'll talk about later in the book, but you don't know that. So don't make that assumption. You don't know that you're talking to the only person involved in the equation. That's why you ask that other question, right? Hey, is there anybody else that, is involved in the decision-making process here as we talk about the house? Oh yeah, well, my cousin. Okay. Don't assume they get along with their cousin. What about your cousin? Man, I hate that dude. You know what I mean? Don't make those assumptions, ask those questions instead. That's huge. Because we all know the old saying, right? When you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and me, right? That's what I was always taught, and that is so true when it comes to this business. So that's what I took mainly from the prepare section.
Cool. All right, let's move on to tone. And Shawn, before you take over, I just want to say that tone is going to be really important for you guys, especially because right now, even before, COVID times, we were still making majority of calls. That's your main form of communication with buyers and sellers. But especially now, you're not meeting people face to face. So tone is going to be even more important for you moving forward. Otherwise, you can say something, and if it doesn't have the right tone to it, it could really go wrong. So Shawn, take it away with the tone.
Let's talk with my late night DJ voice. All right, guys, let's talk the tone. So this is inflection with your voice, right? Speaking in an upward tone or a downward tone. But when you're talking to somebody because you are over the phone, it doesn't really matter. People don't realize this, but smiling is a huge thing, right? Whether you're doing it on your own or you're doing it in front of somebody, it's very infectious, right? And it's a positive feel that comes from it. So the idea of this is to do this, even if you're on the phone, like it matters, right? Your demeanor changes, your feelings change. If you change the face and frown your eyes down and your mouth down and you feel weird or you feel mad, like that's going to come across in your voice, right? So the other part of this is keep that, if you're trying to keep depends on where we're going, the tones that we're talking about are the late night DJ voice, a positive and playful, or direct and assertive. So this other piece that we talk about is slow it down. And the reason is that this is not a rush. And I'm the worst person with this because I will speak a million miles an hour, right? And I understand what I said. But guaranteed, if I'm going this quick, there's probably someone on the other side that's not listening, doesn't understand it, and you're using words that don't make sense.
Is that
right?
why talk to text isn't working?
Oh, it's horrible.
You're talking so fast.
Alexa is off. So very, very important, guys, to understand that you need to mirror slash replicate the person you're talking to. If that person is high pitched, if that person is spun up, if that person's moving fast, then you can go with that. But if that person is slow and they're older and they're moving like molasses, then you need to be like that as well. Because if they're going slow and you're going fast, you guys are on two different channels. It's not going to work, right? And it's really hard to understand how to do this. But when you practice it a few times and you start to use it, you'll see how it works. It is an incredible difference in the tone, in the conversation, and how it changes the conversation. It's massively helpful, right? So the pieces they talk about in here are late night DJ. And this is the tone you use selectively to make a point. Inflect your voice downward. Attempt to make your voice in a calm and slow manner. This creates a sense of trustworthiness and combats defensiveness. Guys, the best way I can explain this is if you have an example of somebody just going off on you and you're not matching them and you're talking the way I'm talking right now, I promise you that is going to be a really hard conversation to keep the match. If they're up here and you're down here, instead of cussing, yelling, fighting head to head, you come back down here and make it very level. It forces this person to bring it down. Even if it's a little bit, it still forces them to bring it down, which the conversation levels back out. So you never know what you're going to get on the phone, but when you start realizing it is when you have to start doing it. You have to start matching them. Okay. Let's see what happened to my notes. I just lost it. There we go. I don't know why it went away. All right. So positive and playful. This is a default voice. Voice of an easygoing, good-natured person, relax, opens your palms, smiles while talking, even if you're negotiating over the phone. This is probably my most common tone when I'm talking about this because I'm very jokingly, I'm always having fun, I'm always cracking jokes, but to me, it's just my personality, right? So, but some people don't appreciate that, and that's okay. So you have to match certain sides of it. You have to know when to use it and when to not. So the inflection in your tone as you're talking up or you're going down, you have to understand how to do these certain things because they do affect your conversations massively. But if you stay in that middle zone, I can't do the late night DJ thing. It's just too low for me. I can't get there. And the assertiveness doesn't always get you where you want to be because it's too aggressive, it's too harsh, it's just too much, right? So that middle of the road is usually what works best, and keeping it positive, but keeping it playful, cracking jokes. To me, it's just an easygoing feeling, which keeps most people on the other side of the line feeling the same way, right? It's my natural personality. So the other part I tell people, and this is for people listening or even on our team, if this is a way you are, be who you are. But remember, changing it to a certain effect, like just a small amount, will help you in your conversations. So I think the last one is direct, assertive tone. And this, they say, use sparingly. And I agree with this because he uses a good example in the audio. And I think it says it in the book because we're reading pretty verbatim. But an example he uses is where they switch out negotiators in the middle of the talk, right? And the guy, Brian, is on the phone, and then there's a Chris that comes in. And Brian's talking, telling him what they're going to do. He's the negotiator. He's the made hen point, right? And then Chris comes on the phone and is like, hey, this is Chris. You're talking to me now. What can I do to help you? So with the conversation, he goes direct and he's assertive. He doesn't leave any room for thought of a conversation. He takes all of that out of the conversation because it's almost like sucking the air out of the room, right? By saying, this is Chris. You're talking to me now. How can I help you? So it allows that person to understand that there is no more room, right? There is no more conversation. We're not negotiating. I'm telling you how this is going to go, right? And I don't have too many examples where that's the best way to do things. It's usually the positive and playful get you better, but there has to be that assertive piece to where you have to bring people back into the conversation, right? And I do that kind of in a positive way, but a playful way at the same time. You might get the older lady talking about her cat, and she wants to talk about it all day long. And I care about Fluffy, but I can't talk about Fluffy all day. So let's come on back to the table, Irma, and let's talk about the house. So I think if we're talking about the three pieces we have here, it's the smile, the slowing it down, and your three tones, the late night DJ, the positive and playful, and this is Chris, direct and assertive. All right, what do you guys think? Let's go with Cam to start with.
So out of these, definitely the positive and playful is the one I use the most. It's just the easygoing, natural sort of having a conversation with somebody, and that's the one that I find works the best with everybody. And people say it on the phone often. Either you're easy to talk to, or it's just easy to talk to you, or I like just the directness. We got that just a day or so ago. That's the one that's going to get you the most positive responses, at least for me anyways. And that smile works. I know Jacob and I always talk about that when we're talking to a seller, usually we're not trying to tie ourselves in front of the computer until it's maybe time to actually talk numbers if we need to. But usually once I get somebody on the phone, I stand up, I walk around my office, I bounce a ball around off the wall, I look out the window, you know what I mean? I have a conversation with somebody just like I would if they were standing here in the office instead of this sitting at the computer ready to type. And because then you're listening, right? And they can tell that and they can hear that. Plus, I think they can hear it in your posture when you're stood up straight, right? And so that's the one I use the most. I agree with the direct and assertive. That has to be used very rarely. Usually when it's somebody is unrealistic in their expectations, right? And that one, I had one of those over the weekend actually, where there's just not a lot of money in the deal, and the house is not going to get sold, I don't believe, any other way than the way we're trying to structure it. And the sellers still wanted some money in their pocket, just to where it would make this deal would never work for anybody. The house is about to go in foreclosure anyways. And that was the direct assertive voice to be like, it's just not going to happen. It's just not there. That doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I would like to give you more money, but it's not going to make sense. For this to make sense, it's going to have to be this way. Does that work for you? And it did. But that's really sparingly that you use that sort of tone. And that's, either that's going to make or break that deal. But either way, if they are stuck where they are in this situation, it's breaking the deal anyways. So we might as well lay it all out there. So that's what I take. I don't know that I hardly ever use that late night DJ voice. I might have to work on that one. Sound like Barry Manilow or something, because that's what I think of when he says that. But anyways, but I do enjoy that part of the book because the narrator, because I do the audiobook thing, he does it so cool and calm, and I just think he sounds like the coolest dude ever, but I'm not the coolest dude ever. So it is what it is.
Me. On me. So tone, my natural tone, of course, is the positive, playful. I'm blessed to have this very nice, trusting, innocent voice. So that's just natural and works for me. While I was reading this, I read. Audible doesn't work for me. But I was trying to do the late night FM DJ voice, and I couldn't picture that either. I didn't know what that was, how that played out. And I agree, the direct assertive tone, very rarely have I had to use it. I did have to use it once. I briefly worked for another investor. who didn't do things, on the up and up, and a person who was under contract and that the closing date had gone past and the house still was not under contract with the buyer and so forth. So this person was getting upset, calling multiple times, angry. So I guess that would be the late night DJ voice, just staying calm while they're irate. But at one point, I just couldn't take it anymore. And he's yelling constantly while I'm trying to stay calm and calm it down. And I just said, stop. Mr. Jones, you want me to help you? You're going to have to stop and listen. And that actually worked. But so there's a time and a place for it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the tone for me.
Yeah. My tone, I think, like everyone else, I'm closer to the positive and playful, but I'm also very sarcastic. And so which is again probably why, if you listen to the first episode, I don't talk to people on the phone, because I think my thing I would just be like too sarcastic, and then I would lose them. But I think it's really important to, as you're on the phone or even in person, but while you're doing your active listening, to sit there, take a breath, a deep breath in, out, and then unclench your jaw and like pull your shoulders back and down, because that is going to change you. Yeah. It's going to change your tone so much. Because I think sometimes, no, because you're sitting there listening and your shoulders, like your jaw starts clenching, your shoulders go up, 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 and you're just kind of like waiting for your turn to talk. And it's all tense. Your body is so tense. It's all right here, upper body. So just take a breath, unclench your jaw, bring your shoulders away from your ears. And that is going to change your tone significantly if you remember to do that. Because otherwise you're just so tensed while you're listening, waiting for your turn to talk. And then you're going to go back into the whole talking over someone, talking quickly, not listening, sort of thing. So just a tip from me. But yeah, so now we can go into one of Shawn's favorites ever, is the mirroring.
Favorites ever?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it like all the time.
You missed that.
No, I got it.
All the time?
All the time.
So guys, let's get into this. This is one that works really well, and this is the mirror and mirroring process, right? So how this works is involves repeating the last three words or the most critical part of the sentence or conversation that your counterpart just said. This creates a sense of similarity and understanding, which facilitates bonding. Uses as connectors because they help your counterpart link thoughts together, right? So let's talk about the mirror process and what that is. We'll talk about it, how they do it, and then we'll talk about how I've done it for years and actually dispositions, acquisitions, a lot of our company uses this subconsciously. Steps for using a mirror effectively are use your late night DJ voice and that tone. Start sentences with "I'm sorry" to earn the benefit of the doubt, and then mirror the last three words on selected words, meaning we'll go through a little conversation real quick and talk about one, but what that looks like and how. And then be silent for the last 4 seconds and let the mirror work its magic, or let it sink in, right? So what I want to use as an example of this would be sellers are talking about their home, right? And you're trying to dig into their why, and you're trying to understand what they're getting ready to talk about. And it could be anything. You're not keyed in on anything yet. And the conversation could be like, "Hey, I'm looking to sell this home. Why are you looking to sell this home?" "Well, I lived there, grew up my entire life, and I just got a lot of memories in it." So you grew up there, there's a lot of memories. And notice how I asked the question with a piece of the sentence towards the last part of the sentence, and my inflection in tone went up because I'm asking a question, right? So it didn't go down. So it allows that person to keep talking to the situation that they just had, right? That they just brought up. It was a touching point. It was a pain point, right? And I want to feel that. I want them to bring it out and get comfortable. So this doesn't necessarily have to be the exact last 2-3 words. You can piece it together. But you'll find that when you do this, it really helps your conversations go really far. And you're getting a lot of information by asking those 3 words or keying in on that exact statement, right? So example was, we talked about one in another session here we had, where a video talking about the cat, where we were trying to help this family that they wanted to get rid of this cat, and how we're going to do that. And I didn't have this type of conversation back then, but if I would have, it would have been, like, so tell me a little bit more about the cat. What was his name? Right. And then letting them talk to it, right? Because it's connecting emotion to an object or to something tangible, right? And then when those two connect, now you're talking to that person, they're emotionally invested in it, and now they're working with you, right? Whether they believe it or not, whether they realize it or not, that's what they're doing. Subconsciously, they're using an emotional trigger to an object, right? And most of the time, it's a physical object when most people do that, unless it's a memory, right? Even memories are things that you can key on and tag into. So the mirroring process is really a lot easier than most think. You can do this with friends and family and coworkers. And man, I think Jacob got me one time where he was just going down the rabbit hole on me. And I wish he was on here right now, but he got me. I think it was during a meeting. He just kept, I didn't even realize it. And then I think, Ashley, you said it, or somebody told me, it was like, Shawn, he's been mirroring you for like the past 2 or 3 minutes. I'm like, God damn it, I missed it. So mirrors are a lot easier than you think, and they get you a lot of information. They get you a lot of roadway, right? And throughout all these questions that you're going to get down anyway, right? By asking or doing this mirror, it really starts to unravel this ball of questions that you're going to get to by just allowing that person to talk. Kaylee, you'll have a really good one I think you can speak to as of one of our conversations from yesterday that you had. And this guy was just giving you all this information from the get-go, right? He wanted to control the conversation. He wanted to let you know what he had. He wanted to give you his information / knowledge of level of knowledge. And he was just like unloading to you, right? And it was a great call because you were just sitting there and listening, right? And you didn't interrupt, you didn't interject. And it was awesome because he was literally getting everything out that you were going to have to get anyway. Right. So he was just unfolding with it. So yeah, that's what I see in these mirroring processes. And it's one of my favorites because it does allow a lot of information to come out without having to ask a lot of questions. 2, 3 mirrors, and somebody would tell you that you're the greatest listener ever and that feel like they really connected with you, right? That's good because you should be. You should be the person that's listening and they just unloaded all their information, right? So let's go around and figure out, well, Kaylee, let's start with you since that's what I was just keying in on. Let's talk about that and let's get your feedback on it.
So that would require me to remember what was said on that call. But yeah, so mirroring, it's, to me, it's just, instead of always asking, can you tell me more about that, or can you elaborate? It's just a quicker way of getting the additional information. But to me, it also comes out off as like you're saying to the person, I want to understand what you're saying. So it's more open, makes them more comfortable than just saying, tell me this, or So I do really like the mirroring. I don't remember what I was mirroring on the call last night because I was just going with the flow. But yes, he was doing a lot of info dumping, and I know some of the things. It was a rental, but he said he liked the rent amount. Oh, I remember one thing. He said he had a couple of offers. So if I said it, if I didn't say it, I should have a couple of offers so that so he can explain more of what that was. And one really wasn't even an offer, so it turned out to be. But yes, it works. Try it with your kids.
Nice, good stuff. All right, Cam.
Yeah, so I didn't realize how, effective this tiny little simple thing was, until I read this book the first time. This is probably the fourth time I read this book, third or fourth time. And I started using it, and I figured I would practice it at home, right? So I did it with my wife. I didn't tell her for weeks or a month or something went by. And it was just general table conversation or general, pillow talk or general talk at the grocery store, whatever it was, right? And it would just be little simple mirrors. And I was like, man, this works. She just keep talking and talking to tell me more and tell me more. And then I told her about it, and she got a little upset, you know what I mean? But then the funny thing was she flipped it on me like a week later and did it to me, and I didn't even know. Like, and that's one thing that he talks about in the book, is that you feel when you first start this, you're like, if I do that, somebody's just going to explode on me and be like, are you dumb? Like, you don't get what I'm saying. Why do you just keep repeating something? And he says something like, I promise you their heads won't explode in front of you. Like, it's just not going to happen. And you can cover so much information about either the motivation of somebody or anything, down from a recent one that as I was going through a house recently with somebody over the phone talking about the roof and this and that, and got to the HVAC system, and he said, does it have the general heat pump style inside outside unit that we have here in Virginia? Yeah, I got one. You got one? Yep, it's out there. I got one outside. Oh, okay. See, it's outside. Yep. Oh, okay. Was it working? Well, not really working. Oh, not working? No, it stopped working last summer, or it stopped working this summer. Oh, the summer quit? Yeah, and with the COVID, I mean, I didn't really have money to fix it. So, it's kind of been just sitting out there. Oh, just been sitting. Yeah. And anyways, I uncovered that, he hadn't been working a lot. So there was some financial distress in there. And we started talking about the AC unit, you know what I mean? And it just threw tiny little mirrors to get him to, it was just strange the way he said, yeah, I got one. It wasn't like, yep, that's what I got. Yep, it works good. That's usually what people say. So you'd be surprised how far you can just take something and just let them keep going and going and going and just giving you more information. And all you're doing is listening and, bouncing your ball off the wall or whatever you do while you talk to people. And so that's the most, that's the number one thing I took from this book first and used it and put it to practice. And then of course the other main points of the book, but that's the easiest one by far. And the easiest one to use and the most effective, I think, for the effort that it takes to use it.
Yeah. And I think that inflection at the end to make it sound like a question is key. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize is just part of definitely the English language, but other languages as well. It was something that I learned when I was taking French in high school, was that if you put that inflection up, even though what you're saying is actually a statement, it comes across as a question. And so we are so conditioned to understand that, like I said, especially in the English language, that anyone will pick up on that. Even if you had not known before reading this book that was something that existed, you would have picked up on that throughout your everyday life. So that inflection at the end is key. And another thing I wanted to talk about was one of the subheadings in the book is talking about being the smartest dumb guy in the room. And that's essentially what this is you are pretending in some respects to not really understand what they're saying to get more information out of them. And Shawn had a really good call with a wholesaler about this, a couple calls with the same wholesaler over the past few weeks. And at one point, I think he said, I think you might be leading me on here and you're a lot smarter than you're coming across, which A, is kind of insulting, because if he wasn't doing this on purpose, it's like, so what, you think I sound dumb? And B, is exactly what Shawn was doing, being the smartest dumb guy in the room or on the call. So that's what you're trying to do here, is to get as much information out of them so that you can eventually find that black swan, but to do it so that they don't feel like you're pulling teeth trying to get information. You are listening, you are talking to them, and mirroring is part of that, comes from active listening, because otherwise we won't hear those words that are important. Or you might say those were the last 3 words, but they aren't the most critical. So just a lot, and definitely worth practicing in your everyday life so that you can get used to doing it on these calls or in person.
Yeah, I would piggyback up that real quick to say that smartest dumb guy in the room. I've come to find it's a hard lesson to learn and to swallow, but almost 99% of the time when you're on a call and you're telling somebody what you know, or you want to tell them what you know, or you want to show them what you know, don't do it. You are not impressing them. You are making a mistake. That's 99.9% of the time. And I've learned that I want to say, no, you need to shut your mouth, Cameron, and let them keep talking. It doesn't go well. Sit back and learn more information and listen and stop talking. So yeah, that's a key point. I'm glad you brought that up, Ashley, because I forgot about that part in this chapter. But yep, golden nugget.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, I want to finish this out by saying this entire chapter is a huge piece of this book, and it is what sets it up for pretty much the rest of it. Because you will notice, and this will be a rewind, but you will notice how Chris references this specific part of the book and goes back a lot of times to this one chapter, right? With tone, with mirrors, that all of it comes back to this piece, even though he's doing multiple other layers, right? So it's funny how you take the small takeaways you get that are usually, and I do this in most books, even though I'm audible, but you read, listen, learn, and you totally forget until it gets referenced back. But this is one good thing he's really good at, is referencing back to this specific chapter, which is the tone and the mirrors that will constantly get you where you need to go, right? And it doesn't fail. And I love the whole part about the dumbest guy in the room. I love that. That is actually probably the best statement I've heard ever. Because you are in business, if you're not in the right room, if you're in the room, if you're in the room where guys are smarter than you, you're in the right room, right? You don't need to be the dumbest guy, but you want to be in a room of guys that are smarter than you so you can learn. But in this scenario, it's the opposite, right? Let that dumbness play out. Let that person feel as though they have the upper hand. They're controlling the conversation. Well, ultimately, you're actually in control without them knowing. So, good chapter. Thanks for listening. Glad you guys joined us.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from anyone else before we sign off? Okay, cool.
Just practice.
Yeah, just practice. So thanks so much, everyone, for listening to us discuss Chapter 2 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. We'll be back next week for Chapter 3. If you're enjoying our podcast or our YouTube channel, please leave us reviews or comments. Let us know what you think, what you want to hear on future episodes, what you want our next book to be, or how Wholesaling Out of the Box or Never Split the Difference has helped you or your business. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.